Meet Emmanuel, a brilliant student who refused to give up despite Professor Johnson's vow to never allow him to graduate unless he paid for a handout. Emmanuel remained determined to succeed. In a small village in Nigeria, there lived a young boy named Emmanuel. From a young age, Emmanuel had always been passionate about chemistry and engineering. He dreamed of one day becoming a successful chemical engineer and making his parents proud. When the time came for Emmanuel to write his JAMB exam, he studied day and night, determined to excel. And excel he did, scoring high marks and securing admission into a prestigious university to study chemical engineering. Emmanuel was a dedicated student, always attending classes and studying hard. He was known for his brilliance and excellent grades. However, there was one lecturer, Mr. Johnson, who had a reputation for being wicked. Mr. Johnson only passes students who bought his handouts or paid him money, something that Emmanuel refuses to do. Despite his exceptional performance in Mr. Johnson's course, Emmanuel found himself failing year after year. Each time he approached the lecturer to inquire about his grades, Mr. Johnson would simply ignore him and refuse to explain. Years passed, and Emmanuel watched as his classmates graduated, got jobs, and moved on with their lives. But he remained stuck, constantly retaking Mr. Johnson's course without success. Emmanuel decided he had had enough. One day, frustrated with Mr. Johnson, his lecturer, he made the bold decision to drop out of school without graduating. He spoke to his father, a wealthy businessman, explaining that the certificate is not the sole key to success. I want to utilize my knowledge and skill to create opportunities for myself, he explained, proposing his plans to start his own oil and gas company instead of solely focusing on his education. His father agreed and supported him in his endeavor. Emmanuel worked hard and successfully established his oil and gas company, employing many graduates and creating opportunities for others. Meanwhile, Mr. Johnson's life took a turn for the worse. Due to the downsizing at the university, he lost his job and fell into poverty. As life will have it, Mr. Johnson relocated to the same state where Emmanuel's company was based. Little did Mr. Johnson know, his past actions would soon come back to haunt him. When Emmanuel needed to hire some staff for his expanding business, Mr. Johnson applied for a position at Emmanuel's company, hoping to get a high-paying job position without recognizing Emmanuel as his former student. Mr. Johnson was shortlisted for an interview at Emmanuel's oil and gas company. He arrived at the office, dressed in his best suit, confident that he would impress the interviewers. As he entered the conference room, he saw a young man sitting at the head of the table. The man introduced himself as Emmanuel, the managing director of the company. Mr. Johnson didn't recognize Emmanuel at first, but as the interview progressed, he began to feel a sense of familiarity. There was something about Emmanuel's voice and demeanor that seemed hauntingly familiar. Emmanuel seemed to be asking him strange questions, ones that didn't quite relate to the job description. Just as Mr. Johnson was starting to get frustrated, Emmanuel dropped a bombshell. "Mr. Johnson, do you remember me?" he asked, a slight smile spreading across his face. Mr. Johnson's eyes widened as he stared at Emmanuel. Suddenly, the memories came flooding back. This was the same student he had failed repeatedly, the same student he had mocked and belittled. Emmanuel pulled out his university ID card and handed it to Mr. Johnson. "I'm sure you remember this face now," he said, his voice dripping with irony. Mr. Johnson's face turned bright red as he realized the gravity of his mistake. He had underestimated Emmanuel, taking him to be just another foolish student. But now, he was face to face with the student he frustrated who had become his boss. Even though Mr. Johnson, the lecturer, failed the interview, Emmanuel offered Mr. Johnson the job, saying, "Life is a cycle and no one knows tomorrow." But the job was not the high-paying position he had hoped for. Instead, it was a humble role, one that would require him to take instructions from his former students. Mr. Johnson was forced to swallow his pride and accept the offer. As he left the office, he couldn't help but wonder how life had turned around so quickly. Realizing the impact of his actions, Mr. Johnson was humbled and grateful for the opportunity Emmanuel offered him. He accepted the job and worked diligently to make amends for his past behavior. Mr. Johnson started his new job, and it was a humbling experience. He had to report to Emmanuel, the same student he had failed and mocked. Emmanuel was kind and professional, but Mr. Johnson couldn't help feeling a sense of shame. As he worked, Mr. Johnson realized that Emmanuel was an exceptional leader. He was innovative, compassionate, and fair. Mr. Johnson began to see Emmanuel in a new light, and he started to regret his past actions. One day, Emmanuel called Mr. Johnson into his office. "Mr. Johnson, I want to ask you something," he said. "Why did you treat me the way you did when I was your student?" Mr. Johnson looked down, ashamed. "I was wrong, Emmanuel. I let my own bias and pride get in the way. I'm truly sorry." Emmanuel nodded. "I forgive you, Mr. Johnson. But I want you to know that my success is not just about me. It's about the people who supported me like my father. And it's about the lesson I learned from people like you." Mr. Johnson left the office feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. He realized that he had been given a second chance, and he was determined to make the most of it. As years passed and time passed, Mr. Johnson became a valued member of Emmanuel's team. He learned from his mistakes and became a better person. And Emmanuel continued to thrive, inspiring others with his story. From that day on, Emmanuel's kindness and forgiveness inspired those around him. His story became a lesson in diligence and the importance of treating others with respect and compassion, no matter their circumstances. As time passed, Emmanuel's oil and gas company flourished, becoming a beacon of success in the industry. His dedication to excellence and fairness earned him a reputation as a compassionate and innovative leader. Mr. Johnson, now a valued member of Emmanuel's team, worked tirelessly to prove his worth and dedication. He was grateful for the opportunity to make amends and show Emmanuel that he had changed for the better. One day, a major project came up that required the expertise of both Emmanuel and Mr. Johnson. Together, they collaborated and put their skills to the test, surpassing all expectations and achieving remarkable success. The project not only brought wealth and recognition to Emmanuel's company, but also strengthened the bond between him and Mr. Johnson. They became a formidable team, inspiring others with their resilience and determination to overcome past hardships. Over the years, Emmanuel's company continued to thrive, expanding its operations and making a significant impact on the industry and the community. Through hard work, dedication, and the power of forgiveness, Emmanuel and Mr. Johnson proved that second chances can lead to incredible opportunities and transformation. As the years went by, Emmanuel and Mr. Johnson's partnership grew stronger and more successful. Together, they pioneered new technologies and innovations in the oil and gas industry, cementing their company's position as a leader in the field. Emmanuel's dedication to education did not waver, and he continued to support young students in pursuing their dreams. He set up scholarship programs and mentorship opportunities, inspiring the next generation of engineers to reach for their stars. Mr. Johnson's humbled by Emmanuel's forgiveness and the opportunities he had been given, became a mentor to struggling students, sharing his own story of transformation and encouraging them to never give up on their goals. One day, a group of students from Emmanuel's alma mater visited his company for a field trip. Among them was a young student who recognized Mr. Johnson and approached him with a look of disbelief. "Are you Mr. Johnson?" the student asked, with a mix of awe and curiosity in his face. Mr. Johnson smiled and nodded, acknowledging his past mistakes and the journey he had led him to where he was now. He shared his story with the students, emphasizing the importance of resilience, humility, and the power of second chances. Emmanuel watches from a distance, felt a sense of pride and fulfillment as he saw the impact of his kindness and forgiveness reflected in Mr. Johnson's transformation. The cycle of change had come full cycle, reaffirming the belief that everyone deserves a chance to change and grow. The students left inspired and motivated, carrying with them the lessons of Emmanuel and Mr. Johnson's story. Their tale became a symbol of hope and possibility, showing that with dedication, compassion, and willingness to forgive, anything is possible. And so, the tale of Emmanuel and Mr. Johnson rocked the world, not only in their thriving company, but in the hearts and minds of those they had touched along the way. Their story remained a beacon of light in the community, reminding all who heard of it of the transformative power of determination and the beauty of focus. This Nigerian folktale teaches us that our actions have consequences, and treating others with kindness and respect is essential. Emmanuel's story shows that success comes from hard work, determination, and using our knowledge and skills to create opportunities. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned on our next video.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. Also remember to like, comment, and share our content with your friends and on your timelines. Feel free to share your thoughts about the story in the comments section as well. Thank you.